That morning, my mom just wanted breakfast, but by noon, she was in the hospital. No accident, no illness, just one meal, one we thought was harmless. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a daughter who nearly lost her mother to something we called normal. Here's what I found out, and what helped us take her health back one morning at a time. I used to believe breakfast was the safest meal of the day. Warm, comforting, familiar. My mom had her favorites, nothing fancy. Just a small bowl of porridge, a bit of bread, sometimes a slice of meat or a boiled egg. We never questioned it because it felt harmless. But over time, I noticed something changing. She was still sharp, still kind, but she wasn't as steady on her feet. She forgot names more often. Her hands shook slightly when she poured tea, and still, I didn't connect the dots. Not until that morning, when her blood pressure spiked so high we had to call for help. It was terrifying, and it made me start asking questions I should have asked long ago. I'm not a doctor. I'm just a daughter who refused to accept that aging had to mean fading. So, I started digging. Not into medicine, but into her mornings, into what she was eating, into what we all assumed was fine. And what I found shocked me. The problem wasn't that she wasn't eating. The problem was what she was eating. In this video, I'll share what I've learned. Not just the foods that were quietly harming her, but the meals that helped her recover body and mind. I'll also show you 5 gentle habits that gave her mornings back to her. No supplements, no secrets. Just small shifts that changed everything. If someone you love is getting older, or if you're starting to feel like mornings leave you more tired than rested, this might be the message you've been waiting for. Part 1. When breakfast became the enemy. It started on a Tuesday morning. My mom had just finished her breakfast her usual. A warm bowl of congee, soft and savory with bits of liver stomach and blood pudding. It was a comfort food she'd eaten since childhood. I still remember the way she smiled when she brought the spoon close to her lips. Steam rising, eyes squinting slightly from the heat. That smile is burned into my memory now, because only 3 hours later, she was lying in a hospital bed with wires on her chest and a cuff tightening around her arm. I didn't think much of it at first, just another aging moment. Maybe she was tired, maybe she hadn't slept well, maybe it was the cold. But the doctor's face told a different story. Her blood pressure was dangerously high. Her uric acid was elevated. Liver enzymes were off the chart. And the worst part? There was no infection, no virus, no fall. Just one thing stood out. The breakfast she'd had. Why would something as innocent as a bowl of congee trigger such a storm inside her body? Why would a meal that felt so warm and easy lead to a spike that made her collapse? That question haunted me, and I realized something I hadn't dared admit before. I had seen the signs, but I didn't want to believe them. I noticed how she leaned in more when reading labels, how she sat further from the TV, how her ankles swelled at night. She used to laugh it off. Just old bones, she'd say. Nothing a good meal can't fix. But the meals weren't fixing anything. They were part of the problem. There's a strange comfort in familiarity, even when it's hurting us. That bowl of porridge, it was packed with cholesterol from organ meats. The blood pudding raised her uric acid. The seasoning, full of sodium and hidden MSG. I later read that animal organs, especially liver and heart, are among the most concentrated sources of saturated fats and purines. For a younger body, it might not matter, but for someone over 60, every bite carries a different weight. One study I found mentioned how post-meal blood pressure surges, known as postprandial hypertension, can silently increase stroke risk in seniors, especially when combined with high sodium and high fat content. And yet, how many of us have served meals like this, thinking we're nourishing our parents? I know I did. It wasn't just the congee. It was the pattern. The way we chose breakfast for comfort, for softness, for tradition, not for healing. And the irony is the very meals that felt the most safe were the ones her body could no longer handle. But back then, I didn't know that. I only saw her pale face under fluorescent hospital lights and heard her whisper, "I'm just tired, that's all." And something about that moment, the way she said it, like she was trying to comfort me, made my chest tighten. Because I knew, deep down, this wasn't just about being tired. This was about what her body had been trying to tell us morning after morning. And we hadn't been listening. The signs were always there. Her sudden dislike of sunlight, her watery eyes when chopping vegetables, her afternoon naps that stretched longer than they used to. The body speaks, but we've been trained to hear only when it shouts. And by then, it's often too late. A doctor I spoke to afterward said something that stuck with me. Breakfast is a signal. It tells the body how to handle the rest of the day. Get it wrong, and the damage echoes for hours. He wasn't exaggerating. That day, I sat by her bed for hours, listening to the beeping machines, holding her cold hand. I felt helpless, but also ashamed, because I realized that I'd been feeding her habits, not health, tradition, not transformation. And so I made a vow to learn everything I could, to unlearn what I thought I knew about good food, and to begin again, starting with breakfast. Because that moment in the hospital wasn't a random event, it was a message. One we were lucky to receive in time, and that message became the first clue that led us down a new path. Part 2. The 5 meals that hurt her. I didn't change everything all at once. At first, I just watched, observed, took notes. I wrote down everything she ate for breakfast for a full week. And by the end of those 7 days, I was stunned, because the pattern was painfully clear. Each morning, without fail, she reached for something soft, something familiar, something that had always made her feel full. But what I saw now was different. These weren't just comfort foods. They were quiet wrecking balls dressed in warmth and nostalgia. The first one was obvious congee with organ meats. I had already seen what that could do. But then came the others. Like pho thai, her favorite Vietnamese noodle soup with rare beef and lots of scallions. It seemed healthy on the surface, broth noodles, beef, herbs. But when I started breaking it down, it read more like a chemical equation than a morning meal. That bowl often held over 1,500 milligrams of sodium. That's the recommended daily maximum for someone her age in just one meal. The broth, slow-boiled with marrow-rich bones, delivered not just depth of flavor, but a heavy dose of saturated fat and hidden MSG. And the beef especially when left rare, carried a risk most seniors forget: foodborne pathogens, especially dangerous to immune systems that no longer fight as fast. She used to say, "Pho makes me feel alive in the morning." But over time, it made her feel heavy, dizzy, unsettled, and she didn't know why. Then there were the days she ate ban quan steamed rice rolls with pork sausage eggs and fish sauce. Sounds harmless, right? But again, every component told a different story. White rice batter with zero fiber. Processed pork, full of preservatives and sodium. Fish sauce, laced with more salt than you'd imagine. And a barely cooked egg, oozing cholesterol that only made her liver work harder. One morning, I watched her finish a plate of it in under 5 minutes. She smiled, wiped her mouth, then went to sit in the living room. 10 minutes later, she said her fingers felt tingly. We blamed the weather. We were wrong. Another morning, I saw her toast a baguette and dip it into sweetened condensed milk. No one talks about this one, but it's more common than people think, especially for older folks living alone. It's easy, cheap, no cleanup, but it's also a blood sugar disaster in disguise. Condensed milk is mostly sugar and fat. The baguette, pure refined starch with a high glycemic index. Together, they cause your blood glucose to spike, then crash. I once read that eating like this repeatedly in the morning can accelerate something called glycemic volatility, a condition linked to memory decline in older adults. It made sense now why she often said, "I feel okay when I'm eating, but I crash by noon." But the one that upset me the most wasn't any of these. It was the morning she reheated leftover rice, fried it with oil, added an egg, and called it a simple breakfast. It smelled amazing. Crispy edges, golden color, the sound of the rice crackling in the pan. I watched her eat with joy. It felt wholesome. Until I learned what happens when you fry leftover rice at high heat. You create acrylamide, a compound linked to nerve damage and even cancer, especially when combined with reused oil, which many households, including ours, recycle out of habit, not realizing its oxidative stress on the body. She looked so peaceful that morning, but her body wasn't. She later said she had trouble sleeping that night. Her joints ached. She couldn't explain it, but her body was speaking. It always was. The more I studied these meals, the more I understood something that no one really teaches us. Fullness is not nourishment. Feeling full doesn't mean your body is thriving. In fact, it can mean the opposite. And maybe the most heartbreaking realization of all. These weren't extravagant meals. They were humble, familiar, affordable. And that's what made them so dangerous. Because they didn't look like threats, but they were. One expert I came across said it plainly. The worst meals for seniors aren't the indulgent ones. They're the everyday ones that look innocent. Each of those breakfasts was a slow drip of damage, a daily dose of pressure on her liver, her blood vessels, her memory, and yet they're served in thousands of homes every single day. It's not about guilt. I don't blame my mother or myself. We did what we thought was right, what we thought was comforting, what she had done for decades. But aging changes the rules. What once nourished her now drained her. And the body, especially after 60, no longer has the same margin for error. By the end of that week, I sat down with her, gently, no judgment, just a conversation. And I asked, "Would you be willing to try something different just for a week?" She paused, looked at her cup of tea, then nodded. And that's when everything began to change. Part 3. What we thought was nourishing wasn't. I didn't expect her to agree so quickly. My mom was a woman of routine. She had spent decades believing that her meals were simple, clean, and good for the bones. But after that hospital visit, something shifted. I think she saw it in my face, the worry, the guilt. Or maybe deep down she felt it too. That her body had been whispering for help, and no one had been listening. So, that week, we changed one thing: breakfast. I thought we'd start with porridge again. Just a lighter version. But she said something that stopped me. "I don't want to feel full," she told me. "I want to feel better." That sentence broke something in me, because I realized how long she'd been pretending that full meant fine. And how many of us confuse those two feelings, especially when we get older. We switched the bowl of porridge for something gentler. A small serving of warm oatmeal, cooked in almond milk, topped with soft banana slices and a sprinkle of chia seeds. No meat, no sauce, just a few textures and a hint of sweetness. At first, she looked at it like I'd served cardboard, but after a few spoons, she said, "That doesn't fight back." That was the first win. Then came the sweet potato mornings, boiled tender, bright orange. I added a boiled egg and a handful of steamed greens, just lightly salted. She looked down at her plate and asked, "Are you sure this is enough? Let's find out," I said. She ate slowly, no complaints, no comments. But an hour later, she smiled and said something she hadn't said in weeks. "I don't feel tired." It was subtle, but powerful, because energy for her had become a rare currency. And now her body was responding. We didn't just swap ingredients. We swapped intentions. No more eating to stay full. Now we were eating to stay well. I began reading more late at night after she went to sleep. I learned about the glycemic load of common breakfast foods, about the link between high-sodium meals and cognitive fog, about something called post-meal inflammation, which causes subtle brain swelling in older adults and contributes to forgetfulness. One paper said this: when digestion takes more energy than it gives, the brain pays the price. I thought about that a lot, about how many mornings she'd spent feeling foggy, about how we'd blamed age, blamed stress, but never questioned the food. Even small things made a difference. We stopped frying. No more reheating old rice in old oil. No more crispy edges. Instead, we used the steamer. Or we ate foods raw when possible. The goal wasn't perfection. It was peace. We reduced her salt intake not just by using less, but by using better. Pink salt, lemon juice, herbs. I learned how flavor could come from freshness, not just fat or fish sauce. And slowly her body began to shift. Her eyes weren't as dry in the afternoon. Her feet didn't swell by evening. She slept a full 6 hours without waking to use the bathroom. Her mood lightened. She even started humming again while folding laundry. That's when I realized we hadn't just changed breakfast. We'd changed her morning. And her morning was changing her life. What surprised me the most was that none of this felt like a sacrifice. We weren't cutting back. We were coming back to something simpler, something her body could recognize and thank us for. There's a strange truth that few people talk about. It's this: most of what we call nourishing is just what we're used to, not what our body needs. And when you strip that away, just gently, just for a while, you begin to see what real nourishment feels like. Not heavy, not sleepy, not slow, but clear, light, present. She once told me, "I feel like I'm waking up, not just in the morning, but inside." And I believed her, because I saw it. She was walking more steadily, laughing more often, listening to music again. Her hands weren't shaking as much. Her eyes looked directly into mine. That was the moment I knew this wasn't just about food. This was about reclaiming something that had been slipping away. And what's even more strange, none of the doctors ever mentioned breakfast. They talked about pills, about exercise, about blood tests and family history, but no one asked what she ate every morning. And yet it was the one part of her day we had the most control over. A part that could either push her closer to another hospital visit or pull her back into herself. So we kept going. And next, we began exploring the meals that didn't just stop harm, but started healing. Meals that felt like medicine without ever tasting like it. Meals that reminded her not just of being full, but of being alive. Part 4. The 5 mornings that saved her. We didn't have a grand plan. No charts, no dietitians, no supplements with shiny labels. Just 2 people, one trying to stay strong, the other trying to keep her here. Alive, yes, but more than that, present, steady, smiling again. And it began with a bowl of oatmeal. But not the bland, watery kind that most people think of. We cooked it slow, in almond milk, until it was creamy and warm. Added slices of ripe banana, a dash of cinnamon, and a spoonful of chia seeds. She looked skeptical, even raised an eyebrow. But then she took a bite. Soft, nutty, sweet, but not sugary. Gentle. "This tastes like something my stomach can trust," she said. I'll never forget that sentence, because so many seniors eat out of habit or hunger, but rarely trust. Trust that what goes in won't hurt, won't weigh them down, won't fog their mind or swell their ankles. From that day on, we began building what I now call her 5 golden breakfasts. Not fancy, not expensive, just healing in the way that feels quiet and kind. The second morning was her favorite sweet potato, a hard-boiled egg, and a handful of steamed greens. Some days we'd switch in pumpkin or carrots. The colors were vibrant, orange, yellow, green. On the plate, they looked like sunrise. In her body, they felt like strength. Sweet potatoes are high in soluble fiber and potassium. Eggs, when boiled, not fried, offer clean protein that's easy to digest. And greens, like spinach, bok choy, or mustard leaves, help clear the liver, regulate blood pressure, and reduce inflammation in the gut. After eating this, she didn't slump into the couch like before. She started walking around the house. She watered her plants. She called her sister. One morning, she even wiped down the windows. Just wanted to see more light, she said. Then came the 3rd breakfast, the one for her hard days, for when she didn't sleep well or woke up anxious. Pumpkin porridge with lotus seeds, soft, golden, lightly salted. The lotus seeds calmed her nerves. The pumpkin soothed her stomach. Together they worked like a lullaby for her body. After this meal, she stopped saying, "I feel off today." Instead, She began saying, "I think today will be better." There's something almost mystical about food that doesn't try too hard, that just nourishes quietly. This meal did that, and her body knew it. The fourth meal was our most surprising success: a bowl of warm brown rice, a small piece of poached fish, and a side of steamed spinach or bitter melon. We'd make a light broth to sip alongside. "Isn't this too much for the morning?" she asked. But after eating, she felt light, not bloated, grounded, not tired. Brown rice carries a slow energy that supports stable blood sugar. Poached fish, especially salmon or tilapia, offers omega-3s that help the heart and brain. The bitter vegetables balance digestion and reduce cravings later in the day. I saw her mood lift after eating this. Not suddenly, but steadily. Her memory sharpened. She no longer stared at the clock, forgetting why she came into the room. And then came the final breakfast, the one that made her eyes light up. Rice noodles with steamed fish and boiled greens. We kept the seasoning minimal, just a splash of lemon and a few herbs. No broth heavy with sodium. No MSG. No fried garnishes. This meal reminded her of her younger days, of markets and early mornings and bicycles on quiet streets. She told me once, "This makes me feel human again." That stayed with me, because for many older people, breakfast isn't just about food. It's the one part of the day they still control. And when that meal feels joyful, simple, light, it shapes the next hour and the one after that. What we found, without trying to be perfect, was that food isn't just nutrition. It's a message, a signal. It tells the body, "You're safe here," or "You need to fight." And for my mother, the old breakfasts told her body to fight against inflammation, against blood sugar, swings, against bloating, dizziness, forgetfulness. But these new breakfasts, they whispered, "Rest now. You're cared for." Within a month, she was sleeping deeper. Her morning swelling reduced. Her digestion became smoother. She said her dreams felt brighter. Her energy lasted beyond noon. One thing that amazed me was how quickly the body responds once we stop hurting it. I once read a line that said, "Healing doesn't take years. It takes removing the harm one decision at a time." And that's what we did. We didn't add superfoods or fancy vitamins. We just stopped making her body fight the food she was given. That was the breakthrough. And yet the meals were only half of it, because what she did after eating the habits she picked up, those became the true guardians of her health. And that led us into the part I never expected. The 5 quiet things we began doing after breakfast, that in their own soft way helped protect her from the chaos she used to carry in her chest. Part 5. A new way to begin. Each day. After we found the meals that helped her body feel lighter, clearer, steadier, something even more unexpected happened. She started asking, "What should I do now?" Not in fear, in curiosity. Before that, mornings had felt mechanical. Wake up, eat, sit, wait for the day to pass. But now she wanted more. Her body had begun to soften, and her mind had started to open. And with that shift came a new rhythm, one built not just on food, but on 5 tiny habits we wove into her routine, like quiet threads holding the morning together. The first was simple, a glass of warm water 30 minutes after breakfast. Not tea, not coffee, just clean warm water. At first, she resisted, said it felt boring. But I told her something a nurse once told me, that warm water in the morning helps thin the blood, gently support the kidneys, and reduce morning headaches. More than that, it helps the body absorb nutrients better from the meal before. She gave it a try. A few days in, she noticed something strange. Her afternoon headaches faded. She no longer felt that dull, pressing tiredness that used to come by 11 a.m. It wasn't dramatic. It was just easier. The second habit was walking. Not far, not fast. Just 15 minutes of movement around the garden or down the hallway, or circling the dining table if it rained. Movement that woke the legs without tiring the heart. The key was not exercise. It was circulation. I once read that blood doesn't just deliver oxygen, it delivers clarity. And in seniors, post-meal movement can reduce postprandial blood sugar spikes by nearly 30%. She used to say she felt slow after eating. But after walking, she said her thoughts felt less cloudy. She even started calling a neighbor to join her sometimes. "We don't talk," she said. "We just walk and listen to the birds." The third habit was unexpected hand and foot massage. Every morning after her walk, I'd hand her a warm towel and a small jar of oil. Sometimes ginger, sometimes eucalyptus. She would sit in the sun, rub her feet gently, then her palms, and sometimes ask me to help with her calves. It became a ritual, a kind of body prayer. And as I watched her close her eyes and breathe slowly, I realized something. This wasn't about muscles. This was about mindfulness, attention, the act of touching your own body with kindness. She later told me, "It feels like I'm reminding myself I still belong here." A doctor once explained to me that reflexology points in the hands and feet connect to major organs, the heart, liver, lungs. Whether you believe in that or not, the science agrees gentle massage improves circulation, calms the nervous system, and even aids digestion. The fourth habit was her favorite. We called it 10 minutes of stillness. It wasn't exactly meditation, and she never liked calling it that, but she would sit by the window or in a quiet corner of the house and listen to music. Instrumental. No lyrics. Sometimes birdsong, sometimes soft piano. Other days, nothing but silence. The rule was no phone, no talking, no chores. Just breath, just quiet. That's when she said the world felt slower. And in that stillness, her heart rate steadied. Her mind didn't jump as quickly. Her hands stopped fidgeting. It was her moment of reset. I once read that 10 minutes of mindful stillness each day can lower cortisol, the stress hormone, by up to 20%. But even without science, you can feel it. The body knows what peace feels like. The fifth and final habit surprised both of us. It was journaling. Not long pages, just 3 lines. Every morning after her stillness, she'd write one thing she was grateful for, one thing she looked forward to, one thing her body was telling her. At first, she thought it was silly, but over time, those 3 lines became her mirror. I'm grateful my feet don't swell today. I'm looking forward to calling my sister. My body feels calm, and I want to keep it that way. Those lines weren't poetry. They were proof. Proof that healing isn't just measured in lab results. It's felt in the small conversations we have with ourselves. And that's what this new morning gave her. A chance to talk to her body, to listen, to respond, not with pills, but with presence. I once believed aging was a process of decline, a quiet surrender. But watching my mother rediscover herself through 5 gentle meals and 5 gentle habits, I learned something different. Aging is not about what fades. It's about what returns when we give the body what it truly needs. And what it needs is not more. It's less harm, more quiet, more care. Now when I look at her sipping warm water by the window, feet tucked under her eyes, half closed with music playing low, I don't see an aging woman holding on. I see a life rising again, one morning at a time. And if you're still listening, still here, I hope you see it too. This isn't just about food. It's about choosing to begin again. With a bowl, a breath, a walk, a page. Because health doesn't return with a fight. It returns with permission. Some mornings now, I still wake up before her. I stand in the kitchen, watching the light slowly fill the space where she used to sit tired, distant, just going through the motions. But now, that chair holds someone different, someone softer, lighter, more alive. It's as if we didn't just change her breakfast. We changed the rhythm of her life. And I want you to know, it wasn't too late. It never is. The body is far more forgiving than we realize. It holds memory, yes, but it also holds hope. With just a few gentle changes, even after 60, 70, or 80 years, it begins to rise again. Like soil that looks dry until it touches water. Like a song that plays again after years of silence. What my mother taught me, without meaning to, is that healing doesn't always come with big declarations or dramatic steps. Sometimes it starts with choosing oatmeal instead of organ meat, water instead of tea, a quiet walk instead of a nap, listening instead of rushing. And if this story touched something in you, even just a little, I invite you to pause and share it. If it helped you, maybe it can help someone you love. Maybe it's a reminder to call your mom, or to rethink your own mornings. Send it to the person who makes breakfast for someone else, or the one who's been feeling heavy for too long. If you believe in the quiet strength of small choices, click like, subscribe for more, or simply leave a comment, I'm choosing to begin again. Because now you know you have a choice. You can hold on to what you've always known, or you can choose something gentler, one morning at a time.